Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back. This is Sipping Tea with Nat and Z. I'm Nat.
And I'm Z. So how's your week been? How's everything?
Well, it's been all right. Kind of just
Right.
trying to ease back into life after last week and, being hospitalized or whatever. So I'm trying to just have a cup of tea a day and enjoy as much as I can. Enjoy is relative, but take some time for myself to recover. So what about you?
This week has been, I don't know. This week was a little challenging for me and a little apropos because of what we're actually going to be talking about today. This week, was my grandmother's birthday and my mother's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Both have, since passed. My grandmother's death being a little bit more recent. So this week was a little challenging and they're a day apart. So one was like Wednesday,
Right.
the next was Thursday. So it was a lot for me to kind of get through
Process.
this week. Right. So, but it's comes up on the topic of what we're talking about today. So, I think that this is going to be a great topic. It's going to probably reach a lot of people.
Definitely.
I know a few people in our lives have experienced some loss this week, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So, just trying to have this conversation in a very holistic way. Not from a therapeutic way, meaning we're not therapists, so we're not going to tell people how to grieve or if they're grieving properly, but just having the conversation because I think it's something that we don't talk about, especially Black people.
We don't talk about it enough.
No, we do not. We don't.
And it's consistent. Everybody has it.
Yes. Everybody.
It's a
Everybody's
great
going through it.
equalizer.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So like Z alluded to, the episode 5, this is the topic is called the gravity of grief.
Yeah.
And all the things that come with it and the reality of a lot of us don't talk about it, like she said. So it's definitely something to sit back and think about it. And I hope you all get something out of this episode. So moving on to the tea of the day.
Yes. Disclaimer. So, we are not tea experts. You should speak to your doctor when drinking herbal tea, as there are potential side effects when mixed with some medications. The tea should not be a substitute for medication. We're not affiliated with any of these companies, nor are these endorsements. So what is the tea on the table today?
So the tea on the table today is Psychocandy, made for August Uncommon Tea. The flavor has darkly sweet rooibos with pumpkin and caramel. That sounds tasty.
Mm-hmm.
Tastes like baked pumpkin, salted butter caramel, golden syrup. This is a nice fall one.
Yeah.
Feels like a brisk walk under a harvest moon, which is courtesy of the pack itself. Caffeine-free herbal tea, and it tastes like a hug in a cup, which I think is quite apropos for the topic of discussion today.
Yes. I actually purchased this tea. I did a sample from the company, August Uncommon Tea. So I bought about maybe 12 or 4 sample packs. 12 or 4. You hear that? See, this is why this week has been 12 or 4.
12 or 4.
What kind of new math is that?
That new math. These poor children I have to contend with.
It's 12 or 14. That's what I meant to say. Packs of sample teas. And you get about 4 cups out of each tea. It's loose leaf. So you only should purchase it. Loose leaf is the best tea, honestly. Yeah. Let's be real. I mean,
love that. It just adds so much more flavor and depth to your tea.
It makes me feel bougie. Like,
You're so silly. You're bougie.
Loose leaf makes me feel bougie. But it's, I would say this, I drank this week and it actually did feel like a hug in a cup. Like I felt when I was drinking it, it made me feel comforted. It made me feel good. Like you said, it made me feel, it reminded me of fall, which is my favorite season of the year.
Yes. Because Z's favorite season is like fall to the nth power, y'all.
Yes, you don't understand.
She is psyched for fall when it comes.
I'm all about fall. I feel sorry for my daughter because
she's gonna be suited and booted
for autumn
in a scarf and some riding boots.
Fall is I love to show out in fall. But like I
They have
said,
the
it
best
really
fashion though.
it does. Like
It
summer,
does.
spring is
Does
my
have the
next
best fashion.
favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yes, give me fall all day, baby. Give me fall all day. Um, but the tea I actually drank it on my grandmother's birthday,
Mm-hmm.
and it did make me feel. Actually almost reminded me of her. It just kind of reminded me because
Right.
the fall was both of our favorite seasons, so it
Mm-hmm.
kind of just made me feel just like good, brought back good memories. I was like, just thinking about her and I, and just, drinking
Mm-hmm.
tea, her probably having a orange juice and vodka, but that's
Yes.
okay.
Her grandma, y'all, was one of the feistiest women I have ever met in my life. She is a trip. And that's
My
why
grandma,
she would be drinking the orange juice
the orange juice and vodka,
for
heavy on the
real.
vodka.
Light on the OJ, just a splash. Just a splash.
Yes. So, it just made me have good memories. It helped bring back good memories. So
Good.
if you're looking for and they have great flavors. So it's the August Uncommon Tea Company. I highly suggest you try it out. Like I said, you can purchase samples, and it wasn't that costly to do the samples. And then, you can buy them in different sizes as well. So, if you're in the market for a new loose leaf tea with like great flavors, definitely,
Mm-hmm.
definitely check them out. So let's just get right on into the hot tea of
Yes.
the day.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start out with new music.
Always
Pharrell.
good.
Oh yes, Pharrell featuring Jay-Z. They dropped
Yeah.
a song called Entrepreneur, and
Oh.
the song, it for me, when I first heard it, I didn't see the visuals, so I
Uh-huh.
gave it about a solid 3.5 tea leaves, right?
Okay. All right.
But then I saw the visual, and it elevated it to 5 tea leaves for me.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Because the song in the video, it celebrates Black entrepreneurs, and it actually
Mm-hmm.
shows real life, business owners, Black business owners, in the video. So
Nice.
it showed people like Issa Rae, who, has her production company. She has like a tea house that
Mm-hmm.
she has,
Oh.
yeah, she has a tea house. I think it is, or coffee shop in Inglewood in
Mm-hmm.
California. It talks about Nipsey Hussle. It also showed Honey Pot founder B. Dixon.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
great.
yes. So for those of you who are listening, if you don't know who B. Dixon is, Honey Pot is a organic feminine product company that's run by a Black woman.
And that Target took up and made a commercial about her.
Yes, and people were up in arms.
About
Certain
it.
people, the
Yes.
melanated deficient people were up in arms
Mm.
about it. And they started to flood like review sites with negative reviews, and they hadn't even tried the product.
Right.
So of course, Black Twitter
Mm.
came in and saved the day.
Always Black Twitter to the rescue.
Yes. And her sales shot up 30%. Now, I saw somewhere else that said 500%. So it was somewhere between 30 to 500% her sales.
That's
And let me
bad.
tell you, it's that new math. I purchased about $150 worth of products from this woman
Yes.
because of the fact that, just because she mentioned the Black girls in a Target commercial, really,
Hello.
we have to like
You
flood
gotta
this site with
support.
negative reviews. That's like, yeah, exactly. So
You have to support.
I bought up a whole bunch of her products. So
Yeah. We've been liking
um,
them for a while for
yeah,
my other endo sisters and our endo Black sisters. We support some of her products as well because it helps with our situation and health challenges with it, the endometriosis tip.
yes. And it's great. Her products are absolutely great. And I've been moving more towards natural products anyway, like
Mm-hmm.
natural deodorant,
Definitely.
natural feminine products,
Ooh,
natural
that's another
soap.
show.
It is. So, and I've been specifically looking for Black owned companies. So definitely, if you're not familiar with Honey Pot and you
Check
still
her
need
out.
those products, check her out.
Definitely.
And this video and this song also comes on the heels of Pharrell. He curated the Times magazine special issue, The New American Revolution. And so the issue features essays by various Black leaders and
Love it.
influencers.
Go
So,
ahead, Pharrell.
I mean, go ahead, Pharrell. Like, I love Pharrell. I love the Neptune. So he rarely does anything wrong to me. So
He's a
and this is
genius.
just
He's a lyrical genius, production wise. He's got it.
Now I wouldn't go so far.
Well, if you're curating for curating the songs that he's doing, I'll say that he sets the mood for those lyricists to put down their track.
Okay, there you go. All right, gotcha.
I'll qualify that. I'll qualify. Yes.
So something else that just released, Nas released a new album, The King's Disease. I give this, initially when I heard it, I was like, oh, it's about 3.5 tea leaves, but I've listened to it now about 3 times. It gets a solid 4 tea leaves from me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My favorite song so far in the album is 27 Summers, but it's the shortest song. It's like 1 minute and 42 seconds, but that by far is my favorite on the album. So what to watch? If you're looking for something to watch, and you haven't already, Netflix has this movie out called Project Power.
I was supposed to watch that last night.
It's so good.
I heard. Will loved it.
It's so good. It's with stars Jamie Foxx. I definitely give that about 4.5 tea leaves. If you are into reminiscing like we did last week,
right?
About 90s music. There are 2 docuseries that are on BET. One just ended. So that was the No Limit Chronicles. It was a 5-part docuseries about the rise and fall of No Limit Records.
Right.
And then the Rough Rider Chronicles is actually on now, and it's a 5-part series. And let me tell you, this series so far has given me a better understanding of DMX and the addictions and problems that he continuously finds himself in throughout his life. He grew up terribly, and you can tell that set the stage and the foundation for all of the behavior that he exhibited from probably his youth to now. So it made me a little bit more empathetic and a little bit more understanding. So that's something, if you're into it, to check it out.
Right.
And then speaking of No Limit, so apparently Monica and Master P are in like this IG beef right now.
What?
Over his brother C Murder. So C Murder was convicted in, I think, 2002 for a homicide that he has always claimed he did not commit.
Okay.
His family has said he didn't commit it. There are witnesses who have since recanted their statements saying that he wasn't the one that killed this individual. His brother, Master P, has been trying to get him out of jail since. Like I said, he got sentenced to life. If you watch the new No Limit Chronicles, you'll see some of this story play out in there. So I guess Monica reconnected with C Murder recently, and Monica and C Murder actually dated during the height of Monica's career.
Oh, okay.
And she spoke with Lala Anthony, who then connected her with Kim Kardashian. And now they're trying to get him out of prison.
Okay.
And Master P has an issue with this because C Murder has been saying like nobody has been helping him trying to get out. And his brother was like, yeah, I've been spending thousands and thousands of dollars for over 2 decades to try to get you out. And the fact that you would say this is kind of suspect. And then C Murder also talks bad about his mom and his dad and other family members. And then kind of said that Kim Kardashian and Monica are like his angels, which, C Murder, which then made Master P get a little petty and saying like, how are you my brother's ride or die when you've been married twice since he's been in jail?
Just put all his stuff on Front Street.
Which she's actually, if I'm not mistaken, only been married once, but she was in a long-term relationship that bore 2 children. But I
Okay.
understand his point. Like, how are you ride or die, but you've been in 2 whole ass relationships since my brother's been in jail. But, you know, I just feel like let's focus on the important issue here is like if he's innocent,
Right.
like trying to see if he could get out of jail. Like, you know, it's not necessary to do all this back and forth. I don't understand why people do all this social media beef anyway. Like, it's not
Because
necessary.
they don't have nothing to do.
Well,
Because of Rona, they just are bored and have nothing else. They don't have a party to go to. They just need to find something to Twitter beef someone about. Like,
I guess.
I don't know. I guess those are.
I guess. But going from C Murder Monica to Monica battling Brandy. So
Oh
we
dear.
talked about this recently,
Right.
where we said Versus should have
Yes.
more women. Well,
Mhm.
they're having Brandy and Monica August 31st. This is going to be epic because you know they don't like each other. And at some point,
What?
I know they didn't. I don't know if that beef has been squashed since then.
And Brandy just dropped a new album.
Yeah, and Monica's about to drop a new album, and Brandy's album is actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good.
I heard.
Monica, I mean, I'm hoping, you know, that the beef don't pop up because, you know, Monica, they call her Gunica. So, and you know, she slapped Brandy.
What?
Once. Yeah, she slapped Brandy allegedly, but I believe it.
Allegedly, but I believe it.
Allegedly, but I believe it. So she, you know, and I know they had some issues after Whitney died. There were some words exchanged between the both of them. So, you know, I'm just hoping that
much more than the boy is mine, I see.
Yes. I'm hoping that this brings other women to the table that may have had some issues, like maybe Lil' Kim and Foxy can put inside their beef. And just,
yeah.
You know,
Foxy up to.
Just do it for the culture. Like, just do it for the culture.
I mean, what else we got to do? I mean, we can listen to some good music.
Right.
And just reminisce.
Exactly. And Foxy's deaf anyway, so if Lil' Kim is throwing shade, she ain't like she gonna hear it. So let's just.
She can read a teleprompter. she can read subtext. What do you call those things?
I don't know if she can read lips or clothes. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, let's just do it for the culture. Let's just do it for the culture. So,
was that all we got?
No, we got Megan Thee Stallion.
And that's right, Megan. Because that was a lot.
It's gonna be a lot. So Megan Thee Stallion is back in the news this week, and not for WAP. But she specifically came out and stated that Tory Lanez shot her. But I thought that was already a given. I thought that was already established. But apparently,
a month ago.
Yeah, she never actually said Tory Lanez shot me.
Everything was alleged.
I guess, but it was alleged. But I believed it. So. I believed it. So she spoke out because she said she was tired of people lying on her and making up stories about what happened. And I think maybe in the first or second episode, we talked about, it was the first episode, what people said happened.
Right.
And so she's just like, I'm over it. Yeah, you shot me. She said that they were arguing in the truck. She was in the front seat. He was in the back with his security and her friend. She got tired of arguing. She was about 5 minutes away from where she was staying. She gets out the truck and then he shoots her. And if you saw her IG live, he shot her in the back of the foot, which means she was walking away. So it kind of, and I guess his PR people have been going out saying all these extra things that kind of put her in a bad light.
But she left.
And she was leaving, right? So she said the reason why she didn't just come right out and say anything is because she was sparing him because she didn't want him to get in trouble. She was trying to save him because of today's climate, because people are, police are shooting first, asking questions later.
Right.
And she said, he shot me and I still tried to protect him because the police be killing us. Those were her words. And so here's where things just start to go absolutely left. People are coming for her and saying, well, why did he shoot you? Yeah, why did he shoot you? What'd you do? And he didn't shoot you for nothing. So people
maybe he has anger management issues.
hello, maybe it's him.
Just right,
Why
because
does
you
she have
don't
to do something to be shot? Like, I
to
don't understand.
justify being shot, because that's not the type of rhetoric we need with these women.
No, it's not. And then, people call her a snitch, a clout chaser. She's been getting called a bitch, a hoe, and saying she's being desperate for attention. So
Because she got shot?
right. So you're a snitch because you're calling out your abuser?
Right.
Really? Is
Who
that
you
what we
initially tried to protect.
have? Right. Because a black man in this country, in this climate, if the cops knew he had a gun, how would that have turned out? She wouldn't have been the only one shot. We know this. And that's the problem. Black women consistently, we protect our abusers. We
Yeah,
protect
we do.
those who wrong us. We do that. And
Multiple times.
it is. And, I'm going to tell you this. If it was Ariana Grande that got shot, Kylie Jenner got shot.
Totally different.
Totally different. If he shot one of them, you best believe he will be 6 feet under the jail right now. You understand what I'm saying?
They wouldn't have asked.
Celebrities would have been out saying deport Tory Lane and having hashtag deport Tory Lane shirts on. And come on now. But here we are, Megan saying it and she's being called a snitch. There was more outrage over Kanye West interrupting Taylor Swift's speech.
That part.
Than there is over Megan getting shot. Are you kidding me?
And then being blamed for it on the other side. I don't understand how do we even get to that narrative that she says what she needed to say. Tory Lanez did not fess up, but you're in the truck. So what are you doing that would warrant you to be outside the truck and shoot someone who's already out the truck, and then that person gets blamed?
Who knows? That's what I'm saying. Like, this is
it defies logic.
It does. And if you just look at the situation, and so, Tory Lanez apparently has had a history, allegedly has a history of being violent against women, allegedly, but I believe it. And he said he has his ex-girlfriend came out and said that he abused her.
Oh.
He was kind of stalking her, showing up at her home unannounced, and she felt like her life was at risk. So, and this was, I forgot when this happened, but come on. Like,
he clearly has anger issues, because if the first thing, and that's one other thing that I don't understand, like just in general sense, that why folks are so quick to pull a trigger, because a lot of our younger individuals in this society have not been equipped with the skill set to de-escalate and talk about, if you want to cuss her out, okay, but what provoked you to shoot her? Why did you think that was the only resolution at that point as a black man, knowing what the climate is?
Toxic masculinity. That's the only thing I can think of. Like, apparently now people are saying, well, he was high. He was off the...
Who cares? You shouldn't be shooting anybody.
So, right. So he was high and he was off Xanax. So now you just justify for shooting somebody? Like, come on. You got
anger issues, sir.
You got anger issues. And here's the thing. Like, this is happening so much that there is a conversation that is starting to happen now where a lot of black women are talking about divesting themselves from black male-centered social justice issues because they feel as though we show up, we're on the front lines marching, we're protesting, we're going to jail behind this.
Multiple on that jail thing.
We speak out against all types of injustices that could possibly happen to you or have happened to you, and then you turn around and you spit in our face. And it's something that needs to be talked about because we are at a point where black women are starting to feel as though our problems and issues are being constantly ignored.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Or sidestepped.
Exactly. And whether you want to hear it or not, you need us in the struggle. You need us. You need us. And if you continue to do these things, you're going to find yourself without the backbone.
But the vilification of us as a rule seems to be happening on multiple levels. Even circling back to our other episode with Will and Jada, they were quick to jump on her regardless before they heard anything and the details. But had it been Will, it'd have been like, oh, yeah, he had an entanglement. Anyway, next on the news, it would have
Right.
just, and then her trying to defend herself, and then just it seems that we get more often than not in certain situations, we as Black women,
we get vilified.
Yes, we get vilified through no fault of our own. Yes, we step out, and then we get the tagline "Angry Black Woman" because we've stepped out and we've spoken out against whatever injustices we see at the time, and then we get a label slapped on us. And then, like with Megan, she gets labeled as a snitch because she's speaking her truth when she was initially trying to cover somebody that she knew was in the wrong.
Exactly. And all in this same time, TikTok 6ix9ine or Taka, whatever that little boy name is with the rainbow color hair, really snitched.
For real.
And everybody's like, oh, leave him alone. It's ain't no street code. Like, da-da-da-da-da. Like, what in the world is happening? I don't understand. But you know what? For y'all who think that she's weird or whatever, she's a snitch and she's like a cloud chaser. Y'all are weird. Y'all just really weird. And y'all need Jesus.
It makes me wonder. So we're just supposed to suck it up and take it continuously for like the times we have generationally and just deal?
I don't know.
Girl. Then we're not supposed to speak the truth to power of what's going on. That's a whole other show, folks.
It is.
It's a whole other show.
And we will be addressing it.
We will have to touch upon that because I tell you. But man, there was a lot of hot tea there.
Yeah.
Some good stuff in there. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll jump right into our tea time segment. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed our little tea time, our little hot tea segment we just had. So stepping into tea time, as Z and I had mentioned, our topic for today is the gravity of grief. Resiliency and just basic human nature, but how do we deal with traumatic loss and grief, and how do we process that? Trauma can impact someone to such an extreme that they just end up going through the motions of daily life. And they're just not alive. They're just, they're just going through the motions. They're just living the life to be in existence. And that flows into grief. And how do we process that? Grief is a natural response to loss. Some people will associate grieving with the death of a loved one, and that can sometimes be the most intense type of grief. But there are other events and losses that can initiate this type of response from somebody and trigger the grieving process in your life, such as the end of a relationship, fertility issues, challenges, miscarriages, the death of a pet, loss of a friendship, serious illness for yourself and or those of your loved ones, the loss of a dream, a job, or a goal that you've been working for or towards, social justice issues like the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Philando Castile. And then also looking at celebrity deaths and the impact that has, even though on those folks we may not know personally, such as Nipsey Hussle, Kobe Bryant, and John Lewis. So circling back to that, Z and I wanted to touch upon some of those areas that have personal significance for us. And touching upon the end of a relationship, Z and I have both been in relationships that have ended. And some of them.
Yes, we have.
And how they have ended is a whole other story for days. I mean, we've known each other since we've been 17 and we're in our 40s now. So there's been a lot of relationships, like we talked about last week with the heartbreak and the auntie anthems. Those end of relationships is where those auntie anthems definitely came into play.
Right.
Because that like I said, that choreographing while I'm crying that is real. Oh, but you really do grieve I think some people, you know, they make songs about it and may chide you or make fun of you for not getting over someone as far as they think they should for the timing. But grief is individual, and all of us have a particular time to process the significance of what had transpired between ourselves and the person we were in a relationship with. I mean, it couldn't just be a romantic relationship. It could be a work relationship. It could be a professional relationship. It's the end of a relationship in its entirety and all the facets that it has.
Right.
That definitely bring to bear that grief.
Right. You know, for me, when I look at this list and I look at the grieving process for me, you know, for me, the ones that hit me hard, because I've almost experienced everything on that list. The one that hit me the hardest is like the serious illness and health issues of loved ones, and, you know, fertility issues, and even like celebrity deaths. Like today, I believe, or yesterday, was Kobe Bryant's birthday. And that it's today. So, you know, just remembering, I can remember where I was when I heard that he had passed away, and that just overwhelming feeling that I had of just like, I didn't know him personally, but just how bad I felt and how like sad I felt. And it was for a whole bunch of reasons that didn't relate to me specifically, but because I had gone through the loss of a loved one, I just knew and how his wife was feeling and how his kids were feeling, and just feeling so bad about what I knew they were about to embark on.
It's jarring. It's very jarring.
It's very jarring. You know, just having, knowing, grieving through my mom's cancer diagnosis and her illness, and kind of just having to deal with that at such a young age, and the impact that had on me and still has on me. Because we're going to talk about, how grief isn't always a straight line. It's not always like you start and then you end, and that's it. Linear. And then going through my grandmom's situation with dementia and having to watch her slowly slip away from us. I grieved that whole time. And, you know, we're going to talk about the grieving process in a little bit, and probably go a little bit deeper in how you and I probably grieve, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be some similarities. Yeah, there's probably going to be some differences as well. But what about you, as far as this list is concerned?
So like you said, I pretty much have experienced all of them at some point in time. The two that probably stick out the most to me would be fertility issues. So because I've kind of alluded to it before in other shows, I am living with stage 4 endometriosis, and I did have adenomyosis and fibroids. And for most of my life, I was diagnosed when I was 19. And I was told at that age that I would not be able to conceive. And that was the first doctor who told me anything about that. And I was like, 19, I can't even have a drink yet. You tell me I can't have kids? Like, it's huge. You know, it was very impactful. It was the delivery of the information was not the most ginger. The doctor, I was by myself. I was waiting for my parents. I was in a room, and he just like laid it on me, and he was like, you need to get a hysterectomy now because the endo is so severe that you just chalk it up. You're not going to be allowed to have kids. And if you do, you won't survive it because of your high risk for having a miscarriage, but the miscarriage itself would kill you. So that was a period of, you know, I've kind of put that out of my mind, I think, when I was 19, 20, because that was just way too heavy. And then I went through my respective health challenges. And this feeds into the serious health challenges, because once I was diagnosed with these chronic illnesses, it's something that you're never going to get well from. Right. It's just something you wake up every day and you know it's there, to be in pain every single day, to have the multiple amount of surgeries that I had. The recent hospitalization is all connected to that. So you always get reminded of what you're not capable of doing.
Right.
So that was definitely, I would say, you grieve that. You grieve your body is betraying you. You grieve that
Mm.
you want to be up and around and be ready to go someplace, and you're set to go out. There's times when I've gone out with y'all and I'm dressed and I cannot go.
Right.
And that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even when we were in college, when we were going through a whole bunch of things, there were certain things that just I was not able to finish. I was not
Mm-hmm.
able to participate in, and just grieving those things that I think a lot of folks take for granted.
Yeah.
That was huge.
And that, even though we're talking about these heavy events that could cause grieving, there are probably times where you've been grieving and you don't even realize it because the losses are more subtle. And it could be COVID related losses, like the loss of freedom, the loss of movement, the loss of activity. Right now, children are going on to college, or getting married. They're moving from the home, and that loss is triggering some grief. And then changing jobs and positions. There are some people now who maybe a loss of job due to COVID, or maybe had to change positions. I know I did a little bit of grieving when I switched positions. So, and I know when people look at those, they don't think that there's a space for grief in them, but there is.
It is. It's a loss. It's a loss.
Yeah.
You definitely have to look at all of the things that can accentuate those. I was also looking at, we touched upon this earlier with the vilification of Black women in some instances, but looking at the social justice issues. And how we grieve what is happening, what we're seeing on TV. We saw George Floyd murdered on television. And that's something your brain has, and the media. It's a double-edged sword, because on one part you want the media to keep you informed, but the cyclical nature of the media is traumatizing each and every time you see it. So you keep reliving that, and you keep having that grief moment, and then it's back up on the news, or then you change something else, or it's a topic of discussion. So when do you really get to grieve if it's constantly being, shown to you, and you're being barraged with all these images of these social justice travesties, and knowing that you add on to this could be my sister, could be my brother, could be my uncle, my husband, and the relatability for us, I think, as Black women, and knowing that these things and how we internalize them, that's a grief that we live over and over and over every single day without, like you said, even realizing you're going through it.
Right.
So looking at types of grief, feeding into this. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. There's normal grief, anticipatory grief, distorted grief. I bet y'all didn't know there were this many types. Cumulative grief, exaggerated grief, and masked grief. So we want to circle back and get into some of those. So normal grief.
Yeah, I think for me specifically, I know masked grief and anticipatory grief are big. And even, I would say, cumulative grief, right? So with anticipatory grief, it's like, it's the grief that you kind of experience with a loved one who's nearing death. And you're trying to balance a thin line between maintaining some level of hope, but then also trying to prepare for the ultimate the ultimate thing that's going to happen, which you're going to have to let go. That's what definitely happened with my mom and my grandma. It was a lot of anticipatory grief because I knew that the end was coming, right? But I was still trying to maintain some level of hope. And I am someone whose grief shows up very differently than others. It is almost a mass grief. I also go into robot mode. So I don't tend to deal with my grief right away. I literally shut it down and I deal with it at another time. Sometimes those times that I wind up dealing, they never come, or they do come at the most inopportune, most unexpected times. Okay. And so, mass grief is just like when you are having symptoms, they're physical symptoms that you don't even realize. So like I developed ulcers, And my ulcers were in part of stress and also grief, because there was a lot of things I just wasn't dealing with.
Right.
I hadn't dealt with. And so it started to show up in my life in physical ways. You know, the cumulative grief I've experienced where I lost, I was, like I said in the last episode, I was in a relationship. It had ended. You know, I was still dealing with the ending of the relationship, only to find out that that person died unexpectedly, then followed it up with my grandmother's death. So it just was like back to back to back to back. And that literally consumed me for a while. And it almost ate me up. It did. It almost took me down, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to be very frank with you. It almost took me down because, you know, and I've said this, I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. And my anxiety is a direct correlation to my grief, because I refuse to grieve. My therapist told me that depression is worrying about, is thinking about things in the future. Anxiety is worrying about things. I mean, depression is thinking about things in the past. Anxiety is worrying about things in the future. And we need to kind of get you into the present. And, you know, that was real for me. That was like an eye-opening experience, and understanding that there were a lot of things that I was not addressing when it came to grief that was starting to spill over into other areas of my life.
Understood. I would say for me, cumulative grief is a big one for me, and how I've been able to deal with it, with having a chronic illness and thinking that you're fine, and then only to find out, boom, something else happens. I've had to have 4 surgeries in 1 year. And even this most recent, I was hospitalized in April, was like, okay, I'm good. I had a surgery, thought it was going to be great to fix whatever was wrong. And then boom, I'm back in the ER last week. So it's like just when I was walking and you get up and you start coming back to what you think is your normal life, and then you get knocked back over with something else that you kind of know is there, but it's just like it's never ending, and it just keeps keeping on. And now, you know, I got to have a surgery. So it's just like, when does it end? And it just keeps, you just realize your body just keeps, you know, betraying that in such a way. Even with mass grief, I think for some of us, you know, that can be manifest like in folks acting out. Either they get really quiet, become a recluse, or they subscribe to a whole bunch of sarcasm because they don't want to deal with the reality of what's going on. And then there's drinking and sex, which is also acting out, and you latch on to something that you feel that replaces the pain that you're having and that you're going through.
Right.
You know, and that kind of rolls into the grieving process.
Yeah. And, you know, the grieving process is something that I think is still something that is kind of foreign to some people. Or it's also misunderstood in a lot of ways. Like it's an individual experience. So the way that I'm going to grieve is not going to be the same way that you'll grieve, right? And there's no right or wrong way. And there's no timetable for grieving, right? People need to get out of that mindset. Well, it's been 6 years since, you know, this person has passed. Why are you still sad about it? Why are you still living in it? There's no normal timetable for grieving. It looks different for everyone. It can't be forced and it can't be hurried. You know, I was a few days ago, or maybe I think it was a few days ago. I think, it was like Nipsey Hussle's birthday. And Lauren London posted something. To watch her grief play out in front of social media is just, it's heartbreaking.
It's very heartbreaking.
Because you see how her partner, well, she called her twin flame, was murdered. And she's even said, I'm still in the grieving process. This has been a year since this man's death. I'm still grieving. And I don't know when I'll be done. Some days it's harder than others. And it's good to be vulnerable in those situations. It's good to be very vulnerable in those situations. You know, during our research, we stumbled upon some myths and some facts about grief and the grieving process. One of the myths: the pain will go away faster if you ignore it. We all
No,
know.
that's
No.
not true.
Does your headache
It'll
go away?
fester.
Right. Your headache go away if you just ignore it? Your stomach pains go away if you just ignore it? No. Sometimes you have to do something to make
The pain.
to ease the pain or help the pain. It's not going to go
Mhm.
away if you just ignore it. It's just not. That's something I had to learn because I ignored a lot of pain for a very long time because I was like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
not going to deal with this. I'm not going to deal with this. Or, well, I saw how my grandmother dealt with her grief and her pain
Mhm.
with the losses she experienced. So I'm just going to follow
For
that
that lead.
blueprint.
Mhm.
And I'm just not going to deal with it. It's important. One and another myth. It's important to be strong in the face of loss. That's my issue specifically. Like I said, I am a robot. I can tell you when I found out my grandmother died, when they called us, it was like literally a switch went on, and I was like in robot mode. I didn't cry. I was just like, okay, what do we have to get done? Right? I just had to
Mhm.
be strong because now I felt like I was the matriarch of the family. My mom is gone. My grandmom's gone. I'm the oldest. It's me. It's up to me. I got to be strong. I got to do it.
Right. I got to step into that role.
I do. And for me, a lot of times I'm learning that this is not the case, but I've always seen like crying and things like that as weakness.
Mhm.
That's something that I had to untrain in my
Right.
brain.
Because it's not.
It's not. And it doesn't mean you're weak if you feel sad or lonely or
Not at
depressed
all.
or frightened. It doesn't mean
You're
that.
human.
You are. There's a lot of strength in being vulnerable. It takes a
Yes.
lot of strength to be vulnerable. It
Extremely.
does.
Extremely.
Right. We talked about this briefly. Grieving has a timetable. It does not. That is a myth. There is no timetable.
Mhm.
Don't impose timetables on people in your life who are going through grief, and don't impose a timetable on yourself. It's a process, and let yourself go through that process.
Whatever that may be.
Right.
Mhm.
And then moving on with your life means forgetting about your loss. That's not true.
Not at all.
It's not true.
People have a lot of problems with like digesting this one, I think.
And you know why? I think there is that's also tied into something that I didn't even know was a word. And I don't know if the New York Times made it up or if it's really a word, but it's something called ambiguilt. And it's the guilt over feeling ambivalent at the death of a family member. Right. So if somebody dies and you just like don't feel anything, or you don't feel like you're grieving, or you don't feel like you're grieving in the way that you should grieve, right? Because everybody thinks that grief looks one way. I had a conversation with a friend recently, and we were talking about her grieving process and how she felt that she's like, I don't know. Like, I'm not grieving. I don't know if it's just because I didn't care about the situation or it just wasn't what I thought it was. I just don't know. And I had to explain to them, I've seen your grief. You didn't see it because you're expecting it to show up in
a
this
certain way.
package. Right. But I've seen it and it shows up, and here's how it shows up. And so sometimes, and then, having that conversation was just like, oh shit.
Right.
That is.
The light goes on.
Because, you, again, when you're taught or you're trained or you watch your elders, your parents go through their grieving process, you assume, oh, that's how I'm supposed to grieve. And I'm not grieving that way. So obviously I don't care about this person, or I don't care about this situation. And that's false.
Always.
It's always false. My grief for me shows up sometimes in anger.
It happens a lot with more people than not.
I was angry. I remember a specific situation. I went on a trip with some friends, and we were having a conversation. And the friend is actually in the video, so she's laughing right now because she knows where I'm going with this. And we were having this conversation about some of the recent events in my life. And I was getting angry, right? I was getting angry that we were having this conversation. And I flipped out. And I just was like, I said some stuff that was just like crazy. Like, I don't care if we ever speak again. I don't care. And it was like, you don't care? No, I don't. And it was like, I went into shut down robot mode. And I realized in that moment, oh crap, that was my grief. That had nothing to do with what they were talking about.
Right.
It was just, I wasn't dealing with my shit.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't dealing with my grief. I kept putting it on a shelf, saying I was going to deal with it later, deal with it later, deal with it later. And I just didn't deal with it. I just didn't deal with it. I was dealing with anticipatory grief because my grandma was in the situation she was in. I was still dealing with the grief of my mom dying.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am at this point, what, late 30s? A relationship that had ended that I knew was terrible relationship for me to be in. And it was not a grief over I still wanted to be with that person. It's just that I was in this relationship for so long, like an idiot.
It's a loss.
Right.
It's a loss of behavior. Consistency.
Yes. So, the myths I think are important to really highlight because these are things that people believe every day.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think looking at that when you're definitely with the time frame, what you were saying about Lauren London, yesterday I made a post on Facebook and it was kind of crazy that normally, I mean, I talk about my endo and stuff like that, but a year ago yesterday, I had a hysterectomy. And unfortunately, the hysterectomy did not go as planned. And I'm still dealing with the things and the side effects and the complications now of it. But there was a period of grief in that I'm having to deal with the loss of what some may say is your perceived womanhood because I no longer have those parts, right? And psychologically what that does to you or what it can do to you is a lot. And then to be reminded a year later that you're still dealing with the situation of the complications is a lot. Being reminded that you won't be able to have, to have kids or those types of things. You grieve those losses of your physical person. And I see it when I'm at the hospital at Walter Reed. My husband is a retired veteran, and you see the other wounded warriors walking around, and you know that they're grieving. You can tell while they're walking through with their either in their wheelchairs or their prosthetics, that you see certain times in their face they're grieving the loss of those limbs. And that's another form of grief that I don't think a lot of us necessarily think of, and that we think that you should get over it in that particular timetable. But, I would consider myself an empath. So when folks grieve, I tend to feel it and it kind of takes me down. So sometimes I become a little bit of a recluse, or I just get the energy of those individuals' fears and sadness kind of gives me low energy, and I just want to sit around. I am a crier, so I will cry like quick fast. It takes a lot for me to cry, although Z knows there is one time that because I don't cry that often in front of my friends. I'm usually that
one time you cried, you called me crying. I thought you were high. And
yes.
I wasn't. She wasn't. But I was like, everybody was like, what's wrong? I was like, I don't know. I think she high. I don't know. Like, because
that's how often I don't show my girlfriends that side of me because I take in a lot, but I mean, I cry by myself a lot. That whole crying in the car, I'm a champ at that.
Yeah.
Or in the bathroom. But that was funny.
It was, and it's funny.
She was like, I think she's high.
Yeah. And it's also funny knowing me that I'm not as empathetic as you are, and I'm not an empath, and that's not something I'm proud of. I just am not. So it was very I felt bad afterwards because it was very flippant. I was like, I think she high. I don't know. We can't talk to her. Meanwhile, she having a whole breakdown.
A whole breakdown on the other side of the phone. A whole other breakdown. And our other girlfriend comes in and she quickly assesses the issue. And she's like, okay, so is it this? Is it this?
And I was
like, to come get you? Okay.
I was like, oh shit, my bad. Like,
this shit was so
she really needed me. I feel bad.
But it speaks to how we both deal with grief and sadness because mine is very different, how I deal with it. and outwardly. And going into the stages of grief, this was developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So, as Z alluded to before and stated, it's not a straight line. It's a it's a roller coaster of toddlers' doodles. I love it, like that whole success map that I know you've seen that you think it's a straight line and it's all over the place and people have no idea. You know, and it's full of highs and lows. So there's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And all of those sometimes they seem to come all at once.
Sometimes.
You know?
Sometimes.
And you're trying to minimize with the denial, you know, and you just keep acting like everything's wrong. And Z talked about that whole ignoring it part. And that's where the denial comes in, where people, you know, you're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm just going to keep going. Everything's gravy, la-di-dee-dee-dee, and it's not. And then the anger that Z spoke to, you know, you have to adjust to that new reality, and it causes you some discomfort emotionally. And you have to, for some folks, they lash out or they just lash in, and then they're self-destructive, unfortunately, and end up hurting themselves.
Yep.
And then those around them without realizing, you know, what they're dealing with is actual grief. There's a bargaining portion, which I think we've all, if anybody has been in any type of grief, we know that bargaining is huge. Like, it goes with the myth of, so basically we're trying to figure out what the bargaining chip can be, as far as, if you help this person get through this, I'll do X, Y, and Z to help yourself feel better. And this often comes into play when there's illness, chronic illness, or you're with someone in their last days. And then the depression circles back. And, you know, when we're looking at depression, and it happens when the emotional part of what you're going through becomes clear, but you're set back in reliving the past and woulda, coulda, shouldas, and realizing that you could have done this, you could have done that, but you were not able to. You know, and that's probably a pretty big one, because when it comes to depression in Black women, Black men, it is something we do not talk about at all, and we don't talk about enough. And I think a lot of us get stuck here, and because we don't even know what it is, and it is depression. And, you know, I think Z and I have been through the courses of life that have left us in a depressive state for short periods of time, long periods of times. I mean, and we've been able to get to a point where we acknowledge that, because we both have therapists. We both talk to people. We both try to figure out what's going on and how to get past that next hurdle. Yeah. And having those conversations with our girlfriends that, hey, you know, you need a therapist. We need to talk about this, you know?
Right. And, you know, for me, I switched therapists, you know, and the therapist I have now is someone who actually helps me acknowledge the fact that I had not been grieving. And that's probably what some things that I started to see, why those things were showing up in my life, because I hadn't really grieved in the way that I think I needed to. Like, I think for me, I stayed in a state of anger for a very long time, a very long time. I was just angry at everything. I was angry at the world. I'll be very frank and very honest. And I think I've probably shared this with some of y'all. Like, I would be angry if we were having a conversation and somebody in the group would start complaining about their mom. I would get pissed. I would get so angry, because I'm like, well, I wouldn't, in my mind, I'm saying, well, at least you have a mom. And, you know, but that's not fair. And I had to realize, like, that's me not dealing with my own stuff and my own issues. Like, I can't be projecting that anger on them. They have every right to say that their mother is getting on their nerves, because she probably is. And I'm pretty sure if my mom was still alive, I'd be saying the same thing. And it was something that I had to really work on and really get to. Like, I remember, and this is just, bargaining is always one of those things that, like, we do that, right? We say, if you get this person through this, you know, I'll do this. We do that all the time. You know, whatever higher power you believe in. I remember watching a Golden Girls episode, and Rose was in the hospital.
Golden Girls.
You know, that's my show. And, you know, Rose is in the hospital for some heart issue. And so Blanche was praying, and she was praying to God. And she's like, she never prayed before. And she told God if he spared Rose, she would never sleep with a man again unless he really, really needed it. And I remember laughing at that scene. And I remember the doctor came out to try to talk, he was hollering at her. He asked her out to dinner. And she's like, well, do you really need it? I mean, do you really, really need it? And he was like, no. And she was just like, well, then I can't do it. And then she looked up in the air and she was like, oh, you are a vengeful God. But I remember that episode and I think about that. And that's what a lot of us do, right? And that's not how this works. Right?
No,
that's not how life works.
That's not how any of this works.
No, like you cannot bargain, your way out of these situations. Like death is inevitable. Loss is inevitable. Right. And you have to, that's where the acceptance comes in. You have to accept it, but accepting it doesn't mean that you just forget about it and you don't deal with the grief of it all. It just means you accept that this loss has come and you don't resist the reality of the situation anymore. Right.
It is.
And it's hard for people to get to that point. It is.
Very. It takes years. Mm-hmm. But I mean, even when you're talking about that process that you had to go through, Z, at what point did you know, like, I need to get this together? Like, what went off? Because a lot of times, like we tell each other this and we're like telling our listeners that these are some things that we go through, but to have the wherewithal to know it's time.
When I had that blowout on vacation with my two friends, that's what I knew, that something just wasn't right. It wasn't me. You know what I mean? Like it was almost like an outer body experience. Like I was watching the situation unfold, and, I had to understand that where they were coming from a good place, but I just wasn't in a position that I was ready to receive it.
Right.
And I was going through this grief period that I didn't want to deal with. So I kept like pushing it away and like realizing like the stress of the situation around my grandmother. And, me and my sister had power of attorney over my grandmother. It's something we'll talk about in a later episode, dealing with the responsibility of that while also dealing with my own personal losses. It was too much to bear. It was too much to handle. And it just all came out. And then that's when I realized I needed to seek some type of help. And then that's when I started therapy. And then that's when I found out I had like a general anxiety disorder. And that therapist got me as far as they could get me. But then I realized there was more work that I needed to do. And that therapist couldn't get me to that place. So then I switched therapists to the one that I have now.
That's a good point you make, though, about switching therapists.
Yes.
You don't have to, like, people get, just like friendships, they're there for a season. Some are there for a season and a reason, and therapists are no different.
Right. And I'm not called the Hood Dalai Lama just for, shits and giggles. It's because I do a lot of work with myself, and I work on myself to be a better person. And I'm always trying to elevate myself to that next level. I'm very self-aware. So I know what my issues are. I know what my flaws are. I'll tell you them. Look, I told my husband when we first met, here it is, all on the table. Here's my shit.
Right.
Here's it all on the table. I'm laying
That's
it
being
all
vulnerable.
out for you. Yeah. If this isn't what you can deal with, it's cool. You go your way, I go my way, no hard feelings. But
I did a PowerPoint for mine, so I
know you did. I saw that PowerPoint, so I understood this. And at first I was like, ooh, this bitch crazy. But then I understood the necessity, and then
I had to, because now you can't say that you didn't know.
Exactly. Now that it's all out there, if a situation arises, you can't say you didn't know. And now, but also in the same, you can help me through these things, right? You can understand that this is still what I'm going through. This is still what I'm dealing with. I'm still grieving to this day with the loss of my mom and my grandma. And it's for different reasons. And let's also put into context, I lost my grandfather, who was a patriarchal figure for me. A year later, I lost my mom. I was in college. I was actually I think I was on my way. I was graduating. I lost my grandfather when I graduated, right? Like towards when I was graduating. I lost my mom my first semester in law school. Fast forward, I lost, like I said, I was in that relationship for a very long time. And this was somebody I know since I was 18 years old. That relationship ended and then they died. And then I lost my grandmother. So I've experienced losses in capacities that I didn't even understand people could experience loss. You understand what I'm saying? And sometimes so close together. So when I'm telling you I didn't deal with my grief, you have to understand I didn't deal at what, 19? Well, no, 21. How are you supposed to process that?
Right.
And again, at that time, going to therapy wasn't normalized. So you wasn't going to catch me in no therapist's office talking about my feelings. It wasn't going to happen. So what happened? I turned angry. I lashed out at a lot of people during that time. There are a lot of people that I had to make amends with later on in life because of the issues I was going through. I'll even tell you, when I had my daughter, Charlie, one of my friends from, high school came to visit. Because it was supposed to be the weekend of my baby shower. I had my daughter unexpectedly. And she came and we had a conversation. And I told her I just wasn't in a good place at that time.
Right.
And a lot of, because we had kind of like a little tiff of falling out. There was something I did to her that was just mean spirited. And I was like, I just wasn't in the right place. And here's why. And I'm sorry for being an asshole. I'm sorry for being that person. I'm not that person anymore, but this is what it stemmed from. I had to do a lot of amends. So, it's maybe somebody's listening to this is going through the same thing and trying to figure out why they're acting this way. Look at your life. Are you grieving something?
Do an inventory.
Is it a big grief? Is it a big loss?
Or is it a lot of little losses?
Right, that you just haven't dealt with.
That
you can't ignore it. You can't ignore it forever. It
will surface at some point. It will definitely surface.
And it'll surface in symptoms, right, of grief. We will have symptoms of grief, and sometimes not even know that that's what it's attributed to. There are things that are identifiable when we're talking about grief and symptoms, right? Shock and disbelief, sadness, guilt, anger, fear, but there's some physical symptoms of grief that a lot of us don't even realize. Fatigue, nausea, your immunity gets lowered during this time. You can experience weight loss or weight gain. You'll have aches and pains.
Oh, yes.
And insomnia. I know insomnia for you is probably top on the list.
Man, I'd be up for 3 days straight. And just my doctor's like, you're suffering from sleep deprivation. You probably shouldn't be driving. But, and the aches and pains, the weight loss, that first time that I broke up, when I had that boyfriend in college and I broke up for the very, very first time, and he was my first boyfriend, I lost so much weight. I thought the heartbreak diet? I just, Lord, me and my sister were the same size. And I'm a thick girl. I'm a thick woman. So that right there, and I got down to an itty bitty size 6 or 7. Whew, that diet right there. And the aches and the pains, and I thought my life was over. And then it happened again 6 years later with the same person. And at that time, it wasn't a good thing because I was working in a psychiatric hospital for children. So that kind of actually helped reprioritize my life from where I thought my sadness was. I definitely was not in a good place. My parents were like, you need to get this mood thing. I moved home for a year and worked in this facility because I thought my degree's in abnormal psych, and I thought I wanted to be a psychologist in the direct care sense. That was it. No, and no. So after that stint, and you see kids that are really going through some stuff, it did put some things in perspective for me. Although I did gain some weight. That was on the other side of the spectrum, and then the aches and pains and that insomnia. Whew, yeah, that's no joke. And you really, the tea definitely. That's when I started getting into tea because it helped me go to sleep. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Well,
sometimes.
tea definitely is something that can help you with insomnia, depending on the type of tea you drink, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And that kind of goes into the other mechanisms that you can utilize while you're supporting your grief. We talked about our family and friends, and, Z and I have all been through that and been able to support each other throughout pretty much since we've been in college till now, till we've had our grown women challenges and issues. One thing I think we talked about therapy, facing your feelings, which I, shot that question to Z about how do you know? And, looking to maintain your hobbies and interests. If you don't have one, maybe get into one. I paint, which is I decorate, and, I draw. Those are my outlets for myself. And, looking into a support group. Support groups are great. I am and still am in a support group for endometriosis. I'm in a couple different ones. And it actually was much more cathartic than I anticipated, because I'm like, why am I going to go on Facebook and talk to these women that I don't know about my innermost angst and being upset? But I realize there's no judgment. Everybody understands what I'm talking about. I'm not complaining, where I might feel like with everything with my health issues, not everybody wants to hear that all the time. That's a lot for me. And that's my reality. But that's not something I always want to talk about with my girlfriend.
Right.
So having that support group and having women who understand exactly what you're going through is so invaluable. I cannot stress the importance and the value of support groups. They've been great. And, we said staying active, go for a walk, try to sleep if you don't have insomnia, and eating properly. A lot of us, I know I'm an emotional eater. And
Me too.
Whew,
Me too.
I will sit there and finish a whole tub of ice cream.
I think a lot of us
yogurt,
are
cup of yogurt. And just, yeah.
Yogurt, bitch. I'm going to eat a pint of ice cream. I don't know if
the frozen yogurt. Kind, the frozen yogurt, like from Cold Stone or
nah, sis.
Rita's. Yeah. I'm just saying, that's my preference. That's my preference. And talking about your feelings, and that goes into the support group or your faith. And faith can be a tricky one because not everybody subscribes to whatever faith you may have.
That's true.
So practicing mindfulness and being aware, having that quiet time for yourself may be more up your alley than saying some sort of organized religion, which doesn't always, work with everybody. And I think folks need to really understand that those that are there to support people, trying not to shove those things down individuals' throat, so to speak. It's just something that we, and we'll definitely dive into that in a little bit, but just be mindful when we're talking about that. But whatever your faith may be, and holding to that and subscribing to it to help you get through. And a big one is triggers. Try to plan ahead. Try to plan ahead. Like Z knew what the dates were coming up. I knew what my date was coming up yesterday. And for those, if it's a death of a loved one, when they have their birthdays or you've had an anniversary with them, those are all triggers. And how can you best secure yourself to do that?
And, we have a friend who experienced a loss not too long ago. And, having the conversation with them, they said, when it was coming around the anniversary of the death, I blocked everybody, shut my phone down, turned it off, because I wasn't going to deal with it, because I didn't want to deal with what I knew was going to come on that day, especially from people who hadn't checked on me the whole year. Don't call me now.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a
That's
big
something we
one.
want to talk. That's something we want to talk
Yeah,
about.
later. We're going to dive into that one.
We can get into that right now, because this actually
Yes.
ties into a lot what we're talking about. Like, you know, you got to support yourself through grief, but learn how to support others through their grief.
Mm-hmm.
Don't encourage people to just get over it. Remember, it's not about you. A lot of times we want to talk about our own grief stories when somebody's telling us how they feel. It's not about you. It's about them.
And I know it's uncomfortable and sometimes you don't know what to say, so you just go back to what you know, but try to hold off.
Right.
Try to hold off.
There is no bright side. And I know that's one thing that some people, it's hard for people to understand. Oh, at least she's not suffering anymore. Unhelpful. Don't say that. Oh,
Not
at least he didn't
helpful.
die suddenly. You knew it was coming, so you had time to prepare. Unhelpful. Well, at least you have other children. If somebody's facing fertility or issues or a miscarriage. Unhelpful.
You can have my kids. Take mine.
Right.
Here, we don't want to hear that.
Unhelpful. You know, don't tell a grieving person how to feel. That's important. Don't say anything to diminish it. Oh, it's just a stepmom. Oh, you weren't that close to them like you used to be.
Right.
Don't say that.
You don't know. You don't know what that person is or where that relationship was left.
Right. Acknowledge just how bad it really is. Right. Just acknowledge that it's bad. And then this one I feel like is most important because I've seen this happen to someone in their life when they were grieving. Give little and often, but also don't offer what you can't provide.
Right.
If you can't provide the support that you're saying out of your mouth, if you know you can't do it, then don't say it.
Please
because
don't.
What you've done is put somebody in a position that they may not need you right then and there. Mm-hmm. But if you tell them, I'm going to be here for you, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to come by your house every day, I'm going to cook for you, I'm going to come and clean your house once a month because I know you're just, people say a lot of things.
Right.
But if you can't follow through, all you've done is hurt somebody more as they're trying to get through this grieving process. Don't do it. Right. Don't do it.
You know, may mean well, but, and then let that person help dictate what they need from you.
Right.
You know,
let them say it. Just say, hey, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I can help you through this. But when and if you need me, I'll be there.
Right.
Just know. A lot of times some people may not call you. You know what I'm saying?
It's nice to have that option in that context.
But it's nice for that person to be there. And do it because you want to help that person, not because you feel like you're obligated or you feel like if it comes off, trust me, a grieving person is going to know if you're just doing it because you really care about them or you're doing it for some ulterior motive.
So true.
Because grief will expose a lot of people.
Ooh, doesn't it though? That's hard. Can we get
It will expose people in your life.
It will. And
I've seen it.
It will. It'll show weddings and funerals and grief surrounding those things. Births. All of that. New house. New degree. You're excited about something. Anything or you're upset about how things didn't work out, that will definitely showcase where people stand with you and how they feel about you and what their intentions are for you.
Right. But it's okay. Weed them out. Them out.
Keep it moving. Keep it moving. So things to remember as we're, looking into these different aspects of grief. It won't be like this forever, and you'd be surprised how strong you are when you don't think you can go on. You will a lot of times find the strength that you just knew wasn't there. And somehow you're able to get through that next minute, that next hour, that next day. Because sometimes we have to take it minute by minute, second by second to get through grief. But also with that, be gentle with yourself. Give yourself a break. Understand that you're going through things. You're physically, mentally, spiritually, all of those things are happening at the same time. So you really have to be mindful of where those things put you emotionally and physically. And, there's going to be times where you're going to have really good days and and everything's going to go great, and it's not going to seem that anything's bothering you. And then there'll be a week or another cycle where things don't feel like that. And, you know, what you're going through is normal. You're human. It's to be expected. And don't subscribe to what media says, what your family may say, friends, social, whatever society may say and dictate what you should or shouldn't be doing during grief. That's not something for you to subscribe to, because you got to get through what you need to get through, how you get through it, the best way you know how. So, and out of grief can come a lot of things. Some people start foundations. Some people start their life in a whole other direction. I started a company for myself out of my grief and out of my pain. And understanding, you know, going back to that, everybody grieves, so you're not alone. Everybody grieves something, somewhere. And, you know, I didn't get to touch, I meant to touch on this. When we're not just talking about people grieve or illness grief, we're talking about pets too. People grieve pets because they are members of the family. I've gone through that twice, unfortunately. So it is a real feeling. It should not be discounted. Some people may be flippant with it and how you deal, but you're not alone. There's communities that you can reach out to that are going through the same thing and that can provide support. So I really think that's something to kind of like meditate on and understand that you can give yourself a break. So we're going to speaking of breaks, we're going to take a quick break and come back with our last sip of the day.
And we're back. This is the last sip of the day with your hood Dalai Lama. Grief is like the ocean. It comes on waves, ebbing and flowing. Sometimes the water is calm and sometimes it is overwhelming. All we can do is learn to swim. And that is attributed to Vicky Harrison. So grief is more than just sadness. It can be a shapeshifter, manifesting itself in the form of immense emotional and physical suffering. Grief is never a straight line. It can attack without warning and leave us gasping for air. The only cure for grief is to grieve. So allow yourself to do so. The process can be hard. The weight of it all can feel like too much to bear. You will experience sadness, emptiness, and anger. But I promise you, you will survive. Take a deep breath and know these feelings can't break you. You are resilient. If you are feeling hopeless, embrace it and then take action. And that's the last sip of tea with your hood Dalai Lama. Thank you for joining us this week on Sipping Tea with Nat and Z. You can follow us on Instagram and I can't read. You can follow us on Instagram at Sipping Tea Nat and Z _pod. And you can follow us for upcoming podcast topics, yes, and news. So, Natalie, you want to take us out with the thank you?
Sure. Thanks for listening, and see you next episode, where we will be discussing getting your affairs in order. Ladies, get information and get your stuff in order. Enjoy your week and take care.